G'day, Mike here for another episode of Making Munch with Mike. Cooking a sausage. After this sausage, there's only 5 more in the pack. Wow. I wish that the number of sausages in a packet of sausages were the same number as slices of bread in a packet of bread. That'd be good. I don't know how many slices of bread are in a packet of bread, so I don't know that they're not the same. I don't know. What a day, what a dollar. What a something. Sorry. Gotta rub the pan sometimes with the stick. Bits getting burnt on there all the time. I think they get charcoaled enough that then they lift off and get taken away. I don't even know what they are, because I don't think I lose bits of sausage. I think it's just like ooze of, like some of the juice of the sausage has enough protein in it that that juice becomes a entity, becomes a thing. Wild. Good stuff. Been watching The Avengers on Disney Plus, watching all the movies. We're up to Infinity War. We've watched half of it. So we watched half of that movie. Because normally, like, we'll watch a movie from after Sylvia goes to bed until we go to bed. But that typically means a 2-hour movie. So then it's a 2.5-hour movie, Infinity War. And there's a lot that happens. It's a very emotional time. So we paused it just when Thor lands at T'Challa's home, Wakanda. Yeah. But it's an interesting movie. I started to think about because it's such a big theme, we don't trade lives. But exchange is a huge theme of that movie. Not in the negative sense, sometimes in the negative sense, but pretty often in the positive sense. People are willing to exchange certain things for certain things. And so, even the climax, spoiler alert for a movie that's however old, is that Doctor Strange is willing to trade to give up the Time Stone for Tony. Crazy. He had an oath. Yeah. It's interesting sort of how it gets explored a bit negatively with Thor, because Thor's quite in a different position where he's like, I've got nothing to lose. He has nothing to trade. He's kind of lost everything already. Yeah. So there's sort of unwillingness to trade, not having anything to trade, but in the end, significant thing is committing to a trade, which I think then it is meant to create some resonance that Thanos wants to do a trade. He wants to trade half for half. He wants to trade in half of all living entities for the sake of the other half of the living entities. Now, there's a lot of holes that people poke in it, but still, the idea of trading, killing one for the sake of another, big thing. Like in real life, not just theme in movies. Movies are about real life. I don't know how complicated to make that statement. Infinity War is about real life. But people will trade in another person's life to make their own life more comfortable. But interesting is that Thanos wants to trade for the sake of everyone else. But I wonder about how that works entirely, because when he sort of snaps people into dust, I feel like you then lose their molecules. It doesn't look like there's an equivalent lump of materials right there that are like, now we have their resources. You just have the resources that they're not consuming. Yeah. It's interesting, but like in the real world, people do make those trades of trading another person for the sake of their own comfort. Like there's lots of sort of just clear examples with abortion and with the kind of economic slavery that happens, that people get paid a wage that is not sufficient or realistic. And now I think it's interesting that complaint isn't just about how we're treating people in China who are working in the sweatshop. Maybe that was a sort of racist motif of the 90s, but now I'm an old man saying racist things. Because I was a 90s kid. But now it's sort of being picked up with like people now are struggling to live on a normal amount of money. So in Australia, people complaining about what's the Australian get work job seeker payments are not livable. I don't know. I was on job seeker a while ago. I don't remember how it was. I remember thinking, oh, it's pretty alright. But I was living with my mum, so of course it was alright. Like, I didn't have to pay for rent. But for people who have to pay for rent and look after a family, that's tough. But like, particularly in America, I keep seeing all these memes about how people just can't afford healthcare. Like, they get sick and they can't afford to go to a hospital. So there's all sorts of trading in that's happening. And it's hard to sort of feel like, well, you know, that person over there, what's happening to them, that's not my fault. Like, it's not up to me that that person only gets paid in tips. They don't get to actually get paid a real wage for whatever job they're doing. But, yeah, I don't know. I think, am I sounding too Marxist? I don't mean to sound Marxist. I don't know. I think there should be a way in which there is sufficient movement of economy, of money moving around, that everyone is able to get food and have somewhere to live. Just some basic things like that. And it's sort of like, well, if you just start giving some of those things away, you start giving away food, well then everyone who works in Woolies, like, where are they getting paid? And like, are they still going to be the ones who distribute the food? But now where is the money that goes to them going to come from? Like, how much are the farmers who make the food going to get paid? Like, that's a tough thing to just feel like. Food is a basic human right, so everyone will just get their food. Similar for housing, if you just make housing not a luxury. I think a lot of the way that people do housing in Australia particularly is luxurious. Makes me think, that house is not entirely necessary. That might just be a luxury item. But how reduced do you want houses to be that there's no luxury in your house at all? Who needs walls? They're a luxury. Yeah. Lots of challenges there, really. And I don't really see how there is an easy way to just solve these problems, to make that everyone gets everything. I think every system, if you want to do democracy or do communism or whatever else, always ends up with some people not being fed, some people not being cared for. I think the American system is looking to be fairly optimistic in terms of leaving a lot of room for entrepreneurship. But then what if the entrepreneurs aren't entrepreneuring caring for people. Doesn't work out very well. So, yeah, Thanos' trade. How to make it so that everyone has enough. Kill half of all people. It's an interesting trade. The current trade is you make some people uncomfortable. That they live in poverty, that they don't have enough. What's the right trade? Just in a purely political sense, I don't know what the answer is. In an eschatological sense, I know what the answer is. Jesus coming back, and then he will bring his people to a place where there is enough. There is enough for everyone. So, I'm watching the Marvel movies, and I like them. But they go into some pretty interesting questions once you start to dig into them. Even the things that seem the most absurd and the most silly, like the snap. Interesting stuff. Anyway, this has been Making Lunch with Mike. I hope you've liked these ramblings, and I will catch you next week. I've got 5 sausages left. Wow. Well, what a nightmare. I'll just go to the shops and buy more. Anyway. See ya.